Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at Genesis chapter 2. It's a text that's familiar to many, but we're going to try and unearth some new insights.
Yeah, there's so much depth to this chapter, layers upon layers of meaning that have resonated for centuries.
Right, it really grapples with some of those big questions about creation, humanity, our place in the world, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Hmm,
And it all starts with a day of rest. God resting on the seventh day.
That's right, the Sabbath. It's interesting, though, how the idea of a day dedicated to rest has kind of transcended its religious roots.
It speaks to a universal human need, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even in our busy, always-on world, the idea of taking a break, rejuvenating, unplugging, it really resonates.
It does, doesn't it? We see it everywhere, really. Work-life balance, mindfulness, digital detox, it's all kind of pointing in that direction.
It's like we're rediscovering this ancient wisdom, like maybe that rhythm of work and rest, it's somehow built into us.
Maybe. And it's not just about the physical rest either. The Sabbath, it can also be a time for spiritual reflection, a time to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
And then we get to the creation of the plants, the first rain. The text says, "And God made the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good."
The language is so evocative. I mean, it's almost like you can feel the earth coming to life.
Right. It really paints a picture, and it really
Yeah.
emphasizes God's direct involvement, doesn't it?
It does, but it also invites us to appreciate the beauty and wonder of the natural world, something that maybe is even more important today as we face all these environmental challenges.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder to appreciate what we have. So then we move on to the creation of Adam, formed from the dust of the ground, given the breath of life.
It's such a powerful image, contrasting the physical body with the spiritual, the soul.
It really highlights that duality in us. We're grounded in the physical world, but at the same time, there's this yearning for something more.
Exactly. And that question, that tension between the material and immaterial, it's something philosophers and theologians have debated for centuries.
It makes you think about how we navigate that duality in our own lives, how we balance our earthly needs with our spiritual aspirations. Okay, so let's talk about Eden. I mean, when you hear that word, you don't just think of a garden, right? It evokes this idea of paradise, perfect harmony, abundance. It's a concept that appears in so many cultures and myths.
And it's fascinating why that is. Maybe it represents a deep-seated longing for a state of peace, contentment, connection with nature.
It makes you wonder if that longing is for something we've lost or something we're still striving for.
Perhaps both. But even in this idyllic setting, there are limits. Enter the two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Ah, yes, the forbidden fruit. This idea of knowledge coming at a cost, choices having consequences.
Right, it raises questions about free will, temptation, the limits of human knowledge. Why was the fruit forbidden? What do you think?
Well, I mean, theologically, it's often seen as a test of obedience, a choice between trusting God's word or going our own way.
Right, but it could also be a metaphor. That human desire to push boundaries, to explore the unknown, even if it means risking danger or defying authority.
Never thought about it quite like that. It's like that inherent curiosity we have, the drive to understand and experience the world around us.
Exactly, a drive that can lead to both amazing discoveries and some, well, devastating consequences.
So even in paradise, Adam was given work, right? To dress it and keep it, the text says. It seems like work is presented as an integral part of the human experience, even before the fall.
Interesting, isn't it? It challenges that idea of work being a punishment. Maybe it's more about stewardship, about using our talents and abilities to cultivate and care for creation.
That makes sense. There's definitely a sense of dignity and purpose in work, even if our day-to-day doesn't feel like tending a garden.
Absolutely. And it ties back to that idea of humanity's role, not just to consume and enjoy, but to contribute, to create.
So back to the command about that forbidden tree. The text emphasizes the choice between blessing and curse, obedience and disobedience.
Highlighting those consequences, but also raising questions about good and evil, right and wrong, concepts that have been debated throughout history and still challenge us today.
It's like those lines are always being blurred and redefined as we try to grapple with complex ethical dilemmas.
And it makes you wonder, what does it truly mean to live a good life? What principles should guide our choices?
Now, here's a detail I've always found fascinating. Adam gets to name all the animals. It's like he's given this incredible authority, this deep understanding of the natural world.
It's often seen as that, a sign of dominion. But it could also be seen as a responsibility, a call to care for and respect the creatures we share this planet with.
Especially now with all the environmental challenges we're facing, it's a powerful reminder of our interconnectedness with all living things.
Absolutely. And how important it is to use our knowledge and power wisely, for the benefit of all creation. But there's another purpose to this naming of the animals, isn't there?
You're right. Adam names all these creatures, but there's still something missing for him. No suitable helper, no one who truly mirrors his being.
Exactly. It sets the stage for the creation of Eve, highlighting that unique bond between man and woman.
Which brings us to Eve, not formed from the dust, but from Adam's own rib. Such a profound image, suggesting this deep connection, this shared essence.
Yeah, a lot of people interpret this as a symbol of equality, of partnership,
Yeah.
man and woman, two halves of a whole.
Definitely more nuanced understanding than just seeing man as superior.
It challenges us to think about what a truly equal and harmonious relationship could look like. What do you think?
I think it emphasizes mutual respect, support, and understanding.
I agree. Recognizing the strengths and qualities of both genders,
Yeah.
valuing their contributions equally.
And then there's that moment when Adam first sees Eve. He says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." Such a powerful statement. Connection and belonging.
It lays the foundation for marriage, the union of two souls, a bond that goes beyond the physical.
And it's fascinating how that verse has shaped views on marriage and relationships throughout history, but it still speaks to us today. That human longing for intimacy, companionship, a sense of completion.
It reminds us that we're not meant to be alone, that we thrive in relationships where we feel seen and understood, connected.
Okay, one last detail, often sparks some debate. The text says, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed."
A simple statement, but loaded with implications. Some interpret it literally. Primal innocence, before sin and shame entered the picture.
Like they existed in this state of pure being, no self-consciousness or societal expectations?
Right, but it could also be metaphorical. A representation of vulnerability and authenticity in relationships. That comfort and acceptance where you can be completely yourself, no masks.
That's beautiful, feeling safe enough to be totally open and exposed with another person, no fear of judgment.
Exactly. That vulnerability is essential for true intimacy. It's in those moments of shared nakedness, both literal and metaphorical, that you build that deep connection, that trust.
Makes you wonder how much we lose by hiding behind those walls, those masks,
Yeah.
afraid to really show ourselves to the world.
It's a question worth pondering. Maybe there's something to be said for embracing our vulnerability, allowing ourselves to be seen, imperfections and all. So we were talking about Adam naming the animals. It's interesting how this simple act, it's got all these layers of meaning.
It really does. It's often seen as a display of his, dominion over creation, like his ability to understand and categorize the natural world.
Right, exactly. But could there be even more to it?
What do you mean?
Well, some people see it as a reflection of human language, and the power of language to shape how we understand reality.
Interesting.
So by giving names to the animals, Adam's not just like putting them in a catalog. He's establishing a relationship, recognizing their individuality.
Yeah, he's bringing them into his world, acknowledging their place in it all.
Exactly. And it sets up this fascinating contrast because after naming all these creatures, Adam realizes there's no one quite like him.
Right. No one who shares those unique qualities.
It emphasizes that solitude,
Yeah.
the lack of a true companion.
Which leads perfectly into the creation of Eve. And this time, God doesn't use dust from the ground.
Right. This time it's Adam's own rib. This is a powerful image.
It sparked so many different interpretations.
Oh, absolutely. But for many, it represents that inherent connection between man and woman, like a shared origin that speaks to equality.
Yeah, I like that. It's not just about being physically close. It's about this fundamental kinship.
Exactly. And this phrase, helpmeet, that's often used to describe Eve's role, it's so often misunderstood.
Yeah, it's not about subservience. Right.
No, not at all. It's about partnership. Two individuals complementing and supporting each other.
Challenging those traditional hierarchies, pointing towards a more equal vision of relationships between men and women.
Exactly. And when Adam sees Eve for the first time, his words, they capture that connection so perfectly. He says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man.
It's such a beautiful statement, full of tenderness and recognition.
It speaks to that sense of completion, like finding that missing piece.
Like he's not whole without her.
Right. And it sets the stage for the concept of marriage as this union of souls, a bond that goes way beyond the physical.
It's amazing how this verse has influenced views on marriage and relationships throughout history.
It really has. But even today, it speaks to us. That desire for connection, for love, that recognizes our shared humanity.
That we're not meant to be alone. That we need those relationships where we feel seen and understood. Okay, there's one last detail that always gets people talking. The text says, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed."
Such a simple sentence, but loaded with meaning.
Some take it literally, right?
Yeah, they see it as primal innocence before sin and shame.
Like they existed in this pure state, no self-consciousness, no societal expectations.
Exactly. But it could also be interpreted metaphorically.
How so?
Well, think of it as vulnerability and authenticity in relationships. That level of comfort where you could be completely yourself.
No need for masks or pretense.
Right. And that kind of vulnerability, it's crucial for real intimacy.
Because it's in those moments of shared nakedness, both literal and metaphorical, that you build that deep connection, the trust.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, how much do we lose when we're always hiding, afraid to show our true selves to the world?
That's a powerful question. Maybe there's something to be said for embracing that vulnerability.
Maybe we should let ourselves be seen, imperfections and all.
Well, here we are, almost at the end of our journey through Genesis chapter 2. It's amazing to see how much we've unpacked.
I know, right? From the Sabbath to Eden to the complexities of human relationships, it's been quite a ride.
And it really shows just how much depth there is to this text. I mean, we've spent all this time on just one chapter, and I still feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
It's a testament to how these ancient stories, they still speak to us today. They
Well,
offer these insights into the human experience that they transcend time and culture.
Absolutely. And it's these kinds of conversations, where we can really dig in, question, interpret, connect these ideas to our own lives. That's where the real meaning comes out.
It's like we're having this dialogue across centuries, engaging with the wisdom of those who came before us and trying to apply it to the challenges we face today.
Exactly. So looking back at everything we've discussed, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from Genesis chapter 2?
That's a tough one. But for me, I think it's this idea that even in a perfect world, even in the Garden of Eden, there's still this need for growth, for learning, for making choices.
Right, like that forbidden tree. It represents free will, right? This idea that we have to navigate complexities and make decisions that ultimately shape our own destinies.
Exactly. It's like those challenges, those choices, they're not necessarily obstacles. They're opportunities for growth and self-discovery.
So it's not about creating some perfect, problem-free existence, is it? It's about finding that inner state of harmony, balance, connection, even when things get tough.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about embracing our ability to grow, to learn, to make choices that align with our values, and realizing that we're all interconnected, and we need to create a world that reflects those values of harmony, respect, and compassion.
It's a beautiful vision, and one worth working towards. So maybe that's the most important message of Genesis chapter 2, that even with all the complexities of life, we still have the power to choose, to create, to build a world that reflects the best of humanity.
Well said. It's a message that's as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Genesis chapter 2. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this incredible text with us. And until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep discovering those hidden depths of wisdom that are all around us.